Welcome to this week's xConnect Northwest, connecting you to the experts. I'm your host, Greg Mills. Today, we're joined by Courtney Flatt, an environmental reporter for EarthFix. Now, before we get going, a reminder that you at home can join in the conversation simply by connecting with us on Twitter at NWPTV or use hashtag xConnectNW. On Facebook, search for Northwest Public Television or by email at kwsutv@wsu.edu. Thanks a lot for joining us today, Courtney. Great to have you back on the show with us.
Hi, Greg.
Hey. And you're on to something very interesting right now, and it's about the reintroduction of grizzly bears into the Northwest. And we'll talk about the ins and outs of that. Maybe we should just start with why is it that the feds want to reintroduce them into the Northwest?
Sure. Well, there are very few grizzly bears in the North Cascades right now. There's maybe fewer than 20, and their numbers dwindled early in the 1900s, late 1800s, when people were trapping them and catching them for their fur, and they were just pretty much hunted to the point they are right now.
Right. So where does the plan stand as it is at this point?
Sure. So right now it's just kind of the very beginning stages. They're testing the waters, looking to see if they want to reintroduce grizzly bears, if they want to just kind of do nothing and let the population go on the way it's going right now, or if there's some other option. So right now they're just kind of testing and seeing what people in the communities want and what biologists think might be best.
So how long has this plan been in the making? I'm sure there have been some long studies, obviously, to get the kind of numbers that we have now on grizzly bears in the Northwest. So how long has it taken for us to get to this point where we're trying to make a decision about reintroducing them?
Sure, they've been trying to make a decision about whether to reintroduce grizzly bears to the North Cascades for a really long time, probably more than 20 years. It's been some of the biologists that are working on this right now, it's been their entire career that they've been trying to boost grizzly bear populations in North America and the continental U.S. And the last time they kind of seriously looked at this was back in 1993. So it's been quite a while.
So there were some community meetings. What happened there? Can you sum that up for us?
Sure. So the National Park Service and the Forest Service have had meetings across Washington, talking to community members and people who live near the North Cascades and in the North Cascades to see what they think about reintroducing grizzly bears. I went to a community meeting in Okanagan, and people there were pretty unhappy. They didn't want another apex predator, as they said, reintroduced into their backyards. But there were other people who were pretty supportive of it as well.
What do you think the overall numbers are as far as those who are attending those meetings? Do they tend to be against it at this point, or do you really have a feel for it, having only gone to one of the meetings there?
I think it might kind of depend where you went to meetings. They had meetings on the west side in Seattle and Bellingham and meetings on the east side. And I think a lot of the ranchers on the east side are not happy with this proposal. There were about, I'd say, 100 people at the meeting that I went to, and a good majority of them didn't want to see grizzly bears reintroduced to the North Cascades.
What are they concerned about primarily, those who are against it?
Yeah, they're worried about their cattle. They're worried about losing land that they're able to graze on right now, and they're concerned about if people are hiking or backpacking or possibly rock climbing in the wilderness, what that might do if there are more grizzly bears on the landscape, and how they might deal with that.
Has it just been too long that there's been a population of grizzly bears to the point where it would become a problem for ranchers? or is there data to substantiate that concern? I guess it seems like it's been a long time since there have been a lot of grizzly bears that close.
Yeah, I think that people are just they're not used to having more bears. They're used to these few bears that you don't see, and the likelihood, biologists say, is that you still probably wouldn't see bears if more were reintroduced to the area. But they're concerned. Ranchers are concerned, and the thing is, I think. Grizzly bears, it would take probably 100 years before we saw a self-sustaining population in the North Cascades. It takes them a long time to reproduce. I think people see what has happened with wolves out in Stevens County, and how there's been problems with cattle there and sheep there. And they're concerned that if you bring in more grizzlies, that would happen with bears, but biologists say it wouldn't be the case.
So what is the county doing about that? And I suppose that means in several ways. Disseminating information so people can become more educated about the things that you're talking about, and just safety for those who are concerned about their animals.
Sure. Well, that was one of the big reasons that the federal government was having these meetings across the state, is they wanted to be able to give more information and have people come and ask questions. It was kind of an informational meeting. They had posters set up everywhere and different biologists where people could come and ask questions and ask about how to protect themselves if grizzly bears were to be reintroduced. But the county commissioners in Okanagan are pretty upset. I talked to a couple of them at the meeting, and they're actually right now looking into suing the federal government so that they won't be allowed to bring grizzly bears back into the North Cascades.
So it sounds like maybe there wasn't a lot of communication between the federal government and local governments as to this reintroduction. They just went ahead with it on the federal level. Does that make sense? Am I right about that?
Well, I think right now they're just meeting with people, and that's the point of the meetings, was to try and see how people felt about it all. But I think that it's pretty clear in Okanagan County that people aren't happy about it. I haven't attended meetings elsewhere, so I can't really say how everywhere else people reacted to the meetings. But I'd say the one that I went to, it was pretty tense at times, but still cordial.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the people who want the grizzly bears to be reintroduced. Who are they? And let's talk about the primary reasons for reintroducing them at all.
Sure. I mean, a lot of environmentalists and biologists are really excited that it's even gotten to this point where they're having these meetings to just talk about reintroducing grizzlies. Like I said, they've been working their entire career to try and help this population out. They say it's really important that we bring more grizzlies into the North Cascades. With the few numbers that there are here now, they don't think that the population will make it. If we just leave it the way it is, they say one day there won't be grizzly bears here anymore.
Right, and what does that mean if grizzly bears disappear completely? If it's a true extinction or whatever it might manage to turn into? But I suppose there's a certain problem right now by having so few of them in ecosystem terms. What changes if we bring them back in?
Yeah, a lot of the biologists I talk to say that having bears on the landscape means the landscape's healthy. They kind of help disseminate nutrients, I guess. So they'll take a fish and they'll eat the fish, and then they'll scatter the carcass farther into the forest, and so then that brings nutrients to the forest. So they kind of have just this beneficial a way of helping out the landscape in all sorts of ways that you might not really think about.
So how do they respond to those who are saying no way or are very concerned or fearful? There are a lot of different reasons that people think that they don't want them or that they legitimately don't want them back on the landscape. What's the response? How are they countering that?
Yeah, well, they've actually done this sort of reintroduction in northwest Montana before. In the early 90s, there was a population of grizzlies that were probably smaller than in the North Cascades, and every year they brought in 2 grizzly bears, and now the population's up to about 45. I think things there before they started bringing in grizzlies were really tense as well, and so now they haven't had any problems. That's not to say that there aren't problems with bears, because obviously there are every once in a while problems with bears, but in this particular population they haven't. And so I think they kind of use that as a model to say, look, this can happen, it can work. Mm-hmm. And really bears, they don't want to see you and you don't want to see them, so they're kind of shy, and they kind of try and stay away from people if you take precautions while you're in the woods.
And that really brings me to hikers and climbers and backpackers. They tend to be the ones I know that think about it firsthand and carry gear to ward off bears, whether it's brown bears and certainly grizzly bears as well, if they happen to be in the area that they're hiking. What are their concerns? Has their story been told? Have their concerns been aired?
Yeah, and hiking groups and climbers, they are a little concerned about it. What people are saying, the best way to handle these things, wear bells, hang your packs, don't bring food in your tent, just bear safety precautions that you'd take anyways if you're out in the backwoods.
So has that been a pretty prominent group, the hikers and climbers that have had much to say, or does it tend to be, so far anyway, in your involvement, been more about the ranchers and the people who are concerned about animals? Do you have a feel for that yet?
They're not quite as noisy, I'd say, as some of the other people that I've talked to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I bet not. So as this, you mentioned 100 years before they could get up to viable numbers. Isn't that right?
Yes, yes.
So we're talking about a tremendous amount of time here as far as generations of people. Have they talked about how they're planning to manage that population as it grows, or has that just been kind of left wide open?
Yeah, I don't think they've even really gotten to that point yet. It's just so early in the process. One of the biologists I talked to said that he's trying to bring back grizzlies here for his great-grandchildren. So it is one of those like looking into the future kind of things.
Yeah.
That would happen one day, not now.
Well, thanks a lot, Courtney. Great stuff. I hope we get to check in with you again as this debate or conversation continues about getting the grizzly bears back into our area. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you at home for helping us out. Hope you enjoyed today's show. You can stay connected with us all week. You can tweet us, link to us on Facebook, add us to your circle on Google+, or email us at kwsutv@wsu.edu. Send us your show ideas, too. And if you missed any part of today's show, don't worry about it. It'll be available online at nwptv.org. Next time on xConnect Northwest, we're joined by 3 student cub reports. And we're going to be discussing the effects of covering the devastating mudslides in Oso, Washington. The trio will join us live from Pullman, and if you have questions for her and for them, feel free to connect with us online. I'm Greg Mills. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on air and online.